All right. Thanks for joining us today. So, first off, what is your occupation?
I am a child youth program assistant.
Cool. Where were you born?
I was born in Northern California at Travis Air Force Base.
Um, what decade were you born in?
I guess the back end of the 80's because I was born 89, but I feel most of my life was the 90's, so yeah.
And as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I learned at a very young age that I didn't want to be a doctor because I don't do well with like blood and all that stuff. So doctor was out of the question. But what did I want to be when I was younger? I don't really know. If I had anything that I was like, oh, I can't wait to be this. I think that came on later on in like my sophomore year of high school is when I really decided what I wanted to be. I wasn't one of those kids that knew when I was younger, but probably little dreams and aspirations of being in the NBA. Always been a big, huge basketball player, and always had a goal outside. So I would always do the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 last shot thing. But if that would, I don't know if that's necessarily what I wanted to be, but that was something that was always had an allure to it because I grew up around that type of lifestyle. So
Cool. What's been the happiest moment in your life
the happiest moment in my life
so far?
I'm not sure. I guess 2010 was a really good year for me. I guess that was just a time period when I felt really sure of who I was or where I was going. I found romance that in that year, and well, we were talking about happiness and the contrast between happiness and joy the other day. So finding happiness in that moment, I think those were one of my moments where during about the spring of 2010, there was some really good stuff that was happening, and there was some really good growth, me personally, and a lot of I found a passion in poetry, which is one of those things that I'm so grateful that I found during that time period. So I think during that time period, spring 2010 is probably that I can remember at this point, probably one of the happiest moments in my life. So,
Cool.
yeah.
What are the most important personal choices you've made that have led you to where you currently are physically and emotionally?
Well, definitely the decision to move back to this area for my spiritual well-being. Definitely, that's what's landed me here physically and probably emotionally right now at this point. But I think one of the biggest
Moving back home.
home, yeah. But I think one of the biggest decisions that led me out of this area and to come back here in the first place was deciding to go to the acting conservatory that I went to, PCPA, which is still one of my biggest. I feel like one of the best choices I ever made was to go to that conservatory. It taught me a lot about more than just being an actor. Just made me look at myself in the mirror as a man, a transition from a boy to a man. So I think literally that experience helped, cultivate everything that happened 2 years ago to cultivate me back to this point where I am right now. So I don't think if I made that decision, I wouldn't be in this position right now. So I have to credit that decision to helping with this decision. So
Cool. What's been your favorite vacation?
favorite vacation. I don't know if it's necessarily. I mean, I had some good ones with my family, but I think one of my favorite, just because it's hilarious, and I think when me and my boys sit back and we talk about moments that happen, we still crack up about these moments. It was a spontaneous. It was the only spontaneous trip I've ever taken. A spontaneous trip down to Malibu for a 4th of July weekend. We didn't know where we were gonna stay. We didn't know what we were gonna do. We just knew we did not want to be in the area we were in our hometown for 4th of July. We were like, man, we want to do something this time. So we went down to Malibu, and literally everything about that trip wasn't planned, but it was a lot of fun, and we just laughed pretty much the whole trip and just had a great experience. So maybe not like, I don't know if it was the best, but it was probably one of the most fun and just hilarious ones when we look back on it. One of the ones that definitely will stick out in my mind when I tell my kids about vacations. So.
Oh, nice. What are your current life goals?
Current life goals. I think it's always been a goal of mine since I guess I was 12, was just the people around me to be proud of who I am. Wherever that is that Christ leads me, that the people around me are proud of who I am, or the people really like my father and my mother Definitely it starts there. And then my boys, I got, you know, 3 guys that are definitely brothers. They go past friendship, you know what I mean? And if they can look at me and be proud of the man I am, whether that's accomplishing something that gains high notoriety or whether that's something that's just he was a man that handled his business. At the end of the day, I think that's been the most important thing. I think legacy, it's funny because for the past month and a half, the word legacy has been doing nothing but bouncing around in my mind. So I think the biggest thing a man has to look at is what is his legacy. And if you go for the people around you having that pride in you and who you are and being proud of you, I think that's better than going for something necessarily that might compromise who you are. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think some people go after a certain goal that will compromise the being of who they are, and people look at them differently. But they're trying to get to that goal, so if they reach that goal, then they can have pride in reaching that goal, and that's not a knock on them. Of course, reach your goals, but if you lose who you are in the process, then to me, it's not a goal worth obtaining. Where me, I just want to sustain the core of me and expound on that, and at the end of the day, when they put me in the grave, that people were proud to know who I was. That it wasn't like, well, I knew him in this point in his life, and it was just I want a consistent sense of something somebody can be proud of. You know what I mean? And something I can pass on, a legacy to my kids that they can go, that was my pops. So, and not people BS it just at the funeral, but to definitely say that past, to say it past the day of my death. So,
Man, thanks.
Yeah.
What's the one thing you're currently worried about?
The one thing I'm currently worried about, I don't know. I try to let go of a lot of worry. I think because of the religious person I am and the walk I have with Christ, if I have a worry, I try to let go as soon as possible. I guess my biggest worry right now is what Kobe Bryant's going to do next season. Is if he's going to come back or if he's going to retire. I guess that's, to me, I don't really have any really other worries. Oh, well, I guess I'm small. I don't know what's going on with my throat right now. There's kind of a pain here. But other than that, that's pretty much it. Nothing huge.
Gotcha. What's one life lesson you could teach me?
I don't know. I'm much more of the learning type. I feel like if I teach anybody, it's by accident. I don't ever try to. But I guess if I had to pick one, confidence. It was something that it has taken me a very long time to learn, and I feel like that held me back in a lot of other avenues in life. And I think a lot of time, especially with, just the public eye and what is deemed as good or deemed as successful or deemed as, if you don't fit this mold, then you can't do this. I think the biggest thing is having confidence in what you have. You know what I mean? Realizing who you are and where you're at in your space and accepting that and not being defeated if it's not where you want to be. But accepting that, realizing that, and just keep expounding on that. Don't belittle where you are in a moment because you need to be there in that moment. But just continually look to expound off that. You know what I mean? Find the lesson in everything, I guess, is kind of what we were talking about earlier in the week. I guess if I had to teach anything, find the lesson in everything. There's always a lesson. No moment of the day is thrown away. No moment of the day is a loss or a waste of a time. There's always a lesson, even in a moment where it's just rough and it's difficult. And I think sometimes, too, that's where we look for our lessons. But even find the lessons in happiness. Like, how did you get to that moment of happiness? Or how did you get to that moment of positivity? There's a lesson in everything in life, and I think sometimes people look at some events as just a waste of time and it didn't really mean anything. But I know sometimes, even in the smallest moments, I mean, it's easy to look back at big moments or big stuff that happened, and it was like, oh, that taught me something, and this is what I learned from it. But it's like, learn it in other things, too. And I think also just, what was it that I read the other day? It said that a fool learns from his own mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. And that it's not, if you're making a mistake, don't make it a habitual mistake. You know what I mean? Because then you're not learning. I think that's what everything in life is about, is learning. So never stop learning and find the lesson in everything.